and welcome to Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television. I'm Millicent Walker. On the news this hour, President Buhari makes crucial decision and policies to avert dangers posed by coronavirus, which includes reduction in pump price of petrol. And federal lawmakers rise to the occasion as they make efforts in ensuring the nation stands up against the coronavirus threat. Plus, Lagos State government orders closure of schools and restriction of religious gatherings beyond 50 people. Welcome everyone to the program. We kick off with what has become the business of everyone, to stay alive, and it looks so much that all hands are now on deck towards halting the spread of coronavirus, with the Nigerian Governors Forum inaugurating a 7-man committee to advise the states on the best preventive measure to take against COVID-19. The committee, led by the Governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, is also to recommend a set of actions required to address the economic challenges posed by the outbreak.
The forum received an update on COVID-19 pandemic from the Honorable Minister of Health and his team, Dr. Osagie Ehanire. Governors pledged to work with the Ministry of Health to set up functional test and isolation centers in every state in the country. After an extensive discussion of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and falling oil prices on the Nigerian economy and the revenues of state governments, the forum constituted a subcommittee consisting of the governors of Kaduna, Kebbi, Ebonyi, Ogun, Nasarawa, Edo, and Jigawa to comprehensively review the trend and advise state governments on the set of actions required to address challenges in our economy. The governor of Kaduna State was mandated to chair the committee.
And as part of the preventive measures against the spread of coronavirus, the Lagos State government is closing down all public and private schools from Monday, March the 23rd. A statement from the Commissioner for Education, Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo, says the move is necessary to protect children and their teachers from becoming more vulnerable to the pandemic. Parents have been asked to ensure that their children practice social distancing while at home, wash their hands regularly or use hand sanitizers, and also observe high standards of personal hygiene. The statement also advises that children should be encouraged to remain at home. It adds that the closure is not intended to create panic, but to arrest the spread of the disease, which has become a global threat. Besides Lagos, schools in the northwest geopolitical zone, they're also to be shut down with effect from March the 23rd. This is part of the precautionary measures adopted by governors from the zone, who have also agreed to shut down other public places as well. The decision is the outcome of their meeting in Kaduna State, where they also agreed to review the strategy towards tackling security challenges in the region. The chairman of the Northwest Governors Forum, Aminu Masari, also spoke on the suspected case of coronavirus in Katsina State.
What we have agreed to do now is, beginning next week, we are working with the examination bodies who are going to close all schools and discourage any public gathering, whether it is ceremonies and all over. We are going to do that to discourage. Including churches and mosques? Everything we are going to discourage. There was a lecturer who attended a course in Malaysia. He came back 10 days ago. And 2 days ago, he started feeling that he has nausea and running stomach. So he reported himself. But once his temperature was taken, it was 36.8. You cannot say he has coronavirus. But whatever it is, he has quarantined himself in his house under supervision of the medical officers. And they have taken samples to Lagos and Abuja. Until the samples come back, you cannot say there is coronavirus.
The federal government also reduced the price of petrol from 145 naira to 125 naira per litre. The new price reduction, which is to take effect immediately, will also affect all other petroleum products, with prices to be set by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and the PPPRA. The Minister of State for Petroleum, Mr. Timi Silva, announced the new pricing after Wednesday's Federal Executive Council meeting, when several ministers took time to update on the adjustments they must make as COVID-19 impacts the price of fuel. In the meantime, the Senate is worried that with the new recorded cases of COVID-19, there is a need for President Muhammadu Buhari to allay fears, reassure Nigerians that the situation is under control. Lawmakers in the upper legislative chamber, they passed a resolution asking the president to, as a matter of urgency, address the nation on the COVID-19 outbreak. And in the House of Representatives, the lawmakers also want the president to issue a directive to religious houses to stop open worship.
The federal government should, as a matter of urgency, direct all schools, no exception, all the schools in Nigeria today to issue a stay-at-home directive to all the students for the next 14 days.
Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. The nays have it.
Because our border is still porous, people from countries that have been banned from going to the US are now using Nigeria as a route.
We should stop them at the border. Once you are not in Nigeria and you are transiting through here, from there we stop you and then you go back to where you are coming from.
Let no one travel up now from this chamber to either Dubai, Europe, anywhere. We should all be here and support Nigeria to fight this battle. Because when you travel and come back, you will not know until after 14 days. Then you come and sit by me or behind me or somewhere.
Urge Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief, to address the nation on the situation of the COVID-19 in Nigeria. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Let's get a sense of what the federal government is doing to stop the spread and how Nigeria can battle this deadly virus. I'm now being joined by Senator Emmanuel Buacha, Deputy Minority Leader of the Senate. Thank you for joining us at this time. Also joining us via Skype is an economist and also policy expert, Yomi Fagbenro. Thank you so much as well for joining us in Lunchtime Politics. Let me start with you, Senator, and that is the call on the floor yesterday that the president should address the nation. We've been getting addresses from the Ministry of Health on COVID-19. Several other state governors have also addressed the nation, their citizens as well. Why is it necessary that the president come and address us on COVID-19?
Well, thank you for having me. It is standard practice that in emergencies like this, in situation of crisis like this, because we're in a crisis situation globally, it is required that the leader, the national leader, the president of the country should talk to people. And this address is not about politics, it's about comforting people. Everywhere there is panic, a lot of people don't appear to understand what is happening. So when they hear from the president, they will be reassured. People will be comforted. Essentially, that is the significance of this address.
Some people have said that perhaps there are certain things that you know and perhaps the people don't know. Because if we look at several other cases, Europe, places they've taken extreme measures, the cases are way more than what we have now. Are there newer cases in Nigeria than what we know or authorities have told us?
Well, for now, the official figures we have received, I think it's about 5 or 8 or thereabout. We are trusting God that it will stop at that, just like the Ebola crisis. But we cannot leave this situation just like that because there are limited cases, so we just sit back. And that is why we need to go ahead and take some proactive measures to ensure that we nip the problem on the bud.
Mr. Fagbenro is an economist. Let's look at perhaps what this does to our economy, the realities on crude oil. What does the reduction of the pump price mean for us? Can our economy survive it? If especially we have the NNPC GMD saying that if the price of crude oil goes below $22, Nigeria will be out of business.
Well, we are in a crisis situation in every part of the world. You will have seen in the news how economies are shutting down and borders have been closed. The prices of oil is going south. A number of people now are projecting that prices is likely going to be hovering around $20 a barrel, and you know how much Nigeria is budgeting for crude oil in its 2020. So at a minimum, there's a clear sign that the revenue projection for Nigeria is now unattainable because of factors that are completely beyond the control of anyone. So what that means is that our plan of spending over 10 trillion naira, the amount we have budgeted for capital and how we have planned to source those funds are becoming like a mirage. So that's why the National Assembly is already looking at the possibilities of revising downwards our projected spending because of the reality of the revenue. So we are in a crisis situation that is totally unprecedented, and that's why strong leadership is required at this particular time. We need to reevaluate our options and our priorities and see how to keep the economy running. At the very minimum, the revenue projections are no longer attainable. And we're not likely to be able to get those sources of fund that we have planned for. So we now need to rethink and rework the entire spending. That's what every economy is doing all over the world, and that's what we expect Nigeria to be doing at this time.
So, Mr. Fagbenro, the finance minister says expenditures need to be cut down, and perhaps another look at the 2020 budget. What perhaps are some of the areas you think we should be looking at cutting?
Well, I don't think, even though everyone is panicking, I think the same approach cannot be adopted when it comes to looking at our spending. I think this is a time that we have a monumental opportunity to actually rework the entire government spending architecture. So beyond just looking for quick wins and low-hanging fruit in terms of what we can cut, I think this is time that we can make some far-reaching reforms. People are saying this is the appropriate time to relook at the subsidy regime. This is an opportune time for us to see whether government can completely get out of that space. This is a time that we can look at our civil service structure and go back to our Orosoye report, like some people are already saying. So for me, rather than doing low-hanging fruit and trying to look for what can we cut in the immediate, I think it's an opportunity for us to actually rework the entire system and see whether we can make some far-reaching reform, and that would be a huge benefit out of this kind of crisis. So that's what I would recommend. The percentage of our recurrent spend, to the total budget by the realities that we are facing appear completely unsustainable, because what we can have, in this kind of a crisis is that nothing is left for capital spend, and we're just eating from hand to mouth. So my own recommendation at this point will be for us to take a critical look at the entire system, at the entire structure, some far-reaching reform that we have been hesitating to take and to make. This is an opportune time where the whole system will be more accommodating to many of those painful steps that we have been avoiding for a long time.
You do agree with the Economist?
Well, I agree substantially, because we at our side have taken a step forward to ensure that we cut down the benchmark and then the budget in itself. Even before receiving correspondence from the executive, we saw the danger ahead. So these measures must be taken. And I'm afraid as events unfold, if there are no seem to be an improvement, we'll have to still go further ahead. Remember, we are an economy that is largely monolithic. And as the price of oil dives, we're expected to take commensurate measures that will match our spending. I think it's quite right to a significant level.
All right, we'll take a break now. We'll continue with this issue. Still to come as well, former governor of Osun State and other defectors return to the People's Democratic Party. We'll bring you details when we return. Welcome back to the program. But first, here are some of your stories in brief. We begin with the YPP, the Young Progressive Party. They have petitioned the National Judicial Council calling for the investigation of Justice Bello Kawu of the FCT High Court over his alleged involvement in the falsification of court records relied upon by the court to deliver the judgment, sacking Senator Ifeanyi Ubah from the Senate. In the petition titled Judicial Misconduct Against Justice Bello Kawu in respect of the suit involving Anani Chuka versus Ubah Ifeanyi Patrick, the national chairman of the party, Bishop Amakari, claims Justice Kawu conspired with some counsel now standing trial before the Federal High Court to falsify court processes and record of proceedings. Elsewhere, Kano State Public Complaints and Anti-Corruption Commission reveals that its probe has uncovered fresh facts to press charges against the deposed Emir Sanusi. In an exclusive interview with Channels Television, Executive Chairman of the Commission, Mr. Magaji, alleges that they have found new evidence of land racketeering involving the former Emir, in addition to earlier allegations of misappropriating 3.2 billion naira. We continue with our discussions with regards to the federal government and their efforts towards curbing the effects or spread of COVID-19 in Nigeria. We've been talking with our guests in the studio here, Senator Emmanuel Bwacha, Deputy Minority Leader, and also we have an economist policy expert who's joined us via Skype, and that is Mr. Yomi Fagbenro. Thank you so much for your patience. Perhaps we'll come back to you, Senator, and you mentioned, in the floor of the Senate, they complained about the porous borders. Nobody knew that we're going to have a COVID-19 case coming through the land borders. But also, we have several steps that perhaps Lagos State government has said, close down schools from Monday, Northwest as well. Their decision from Monday to shut down the schools. And we know that at the Senate, they've talked about embarking on perhaps no gathering for open worship. How are you going to enforce this? Is the executive listening to the National Assembly on some of the steps we need to take further?
Well, first and foremost, there are some steps that need to be taken that will involve some international key players, particularly in the ECOWAS sub-region. We are talking about movement around the border, and we have an ECOWAS protocol that allows members of the community to move freely. So I'm speaking now as an ECOWAS parliamentarian that we need at that level to redefine this protocol and ensure that because of the prevailing circumstances, we ensure that this protocol is halted for the meantime. Outside of this, there has been a major disadvantage of this particular protocol as it affects the ongoing insecurity in the country. So we'll take advantage of this outbreak and address these issues holistically, particularly in the northern fringes, borders with Mali, with Chad, and extending to Libya. So people moving freely. One of the victims, we are told, crossing through the land border. So this could be taking advantage of one of these common protocol that bind us together as nations. And then on the home front, we also need cooperation of religious leaders because it is a difficult time. We must understand this. But the way this virus spread, if measures like copying excessive gathering in a particular place is not adopted, the impact may be huge. It may be massive. So we must understand this too. And like we said, on the international front, the visa on arrival, which Nigeria also adopts, must also be stopped because we have received very credible intelligence that some nationals take advantage of this, come into Nigeria and take flight to their, to their next destinations because of this porous policy advantages they take. They take advantage of these porous policies. So I think if we take these measures and be very, very firm in enforcement, we will be able to achieve a significant progress.
Mr. Fagbero, finally to you, what do you think the government should be doing? How can we cushion some of the effects that the spread of the virus might have on our economy?
Well, I think this is the time for the economic advisory team and the rest of the presidency to go back to the drawing board and try to articulate very clearly a roadmap for helping the country to navigate. I'm aware that some couple of weeks back, we've had conversation in the media that recommendations have been submitted to the president by the Economic Advisory Council on steps that the government can take. We are aware also that the Central Bank of Nigeria did, organize similar program, came up with some far-reaching recommendations to the government. But this is a time that haste and sense of urgency is very critical. We cannot allow things to degenerate to a level that things will have gone so bad before we wake up. We really need to be up and doing now because many of the reforms and many of the changes are likely to be implementable only on probably a medium term, because if you look at our budget, for example, no matter how much the government loses from a revenue side, recurrent spending, personnel costs, debt servicing, and all of that, these are obligations that is going to be very difficult for you to fall short on. So the aspect of our budget that is going to be critically hit is the capital spending. So we need to start very early. There's a sense of urgency that a crisis of this magnitude required, and we really need to see the government showing that sense of prioritization. The whole country needs to be calmed. Thankfully, we had the CBN announcing an intervention fund. If you listen to different countries around the world, bailout programs are being planned, how businesses and families are going to be supported are being planned, economic bailout fund, tax subsidies and reliefs and all of that. So all of this action need to be coordinated. Yeah. Say it again?
So I was just saying that I guess we cannot really afford some of those, things you've mentioned with regards to the governments and the bailout fund. We can't really afford it here, can we?
Well, each country will need to evaluate its options within the resources that is available to it. But what we cannot afford is a sit-down, no-action scenario. We need to devise what is appropriate for us, and the signs are all there for us to see things that we can look at. The number of conversations.
Words of Senator. Just because we're running out of time. And Senator, this is if the president does not address the nation, and if you said no gatherings, worship, more than it depends. If they don't listen to it, what next step will the Senate take?
Well, I don't think the president will not listen. There is no politics involved in coming out to address the nation. It's all part of his constitutional responsibilities. The idea, like I said, is to bring comfort upon a population that is running into confusion. There is pandemonium everywhere. A lot of people don't even understand what is happening. So if they hear from a leader, a sitting president, people become encouraged and comforted.
We'd like to appreciate your time. Senator Emmanuel Boacha, Deputy Minority Leader at the Senate, and also Yomi Olugbenro, sorry getting your name all mixed up, an economist, policy expert who's joined us via Skype. Thank you both for joining us at this time.
Thank you.
Now, the People's Democratic Party in the Southwest appears to be closing ranks as it strategizes ahead of the governorship election in Ondo State later in the year, with the party receiving previously defected members back to its fold. At a unification rally in Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, some prominent members who had left the PDP before the 2019 elections returned and once again pledged their loyalty to the party. The PDP national chairman, who received the returning and new members, says the Southwest PDP has embraced Northeast unity and will work with the purpose to reclaim the region. A former governor of Osun State, Olagunsoye Oyinlola, who spoke on behalf of the returnees, explained that he abandoned the APC because of the failed promises made to Nigerians. Meanwhile, the host and Oyo State Governor, Mr. Makinde, noted that the PDP will continue to leverage on opportunities created by the unification process. Well, that's it on the program. We'd like to thank you for watching. Don't forget to join the discussion via our social media platforms, our website, which also has updates on all you need to know on COVID-19. I'm Millicent Walker. I'll see you soon.